By the early 1770s, Boston had become a flashpoint for revolution, a colonial port of 16,000 inhabitants where tension between British authority and colonial resistance was about to explode into war. Through AI reconstruction of historic engravings and paintings, we explore Boston at the moment America was born. I'm William, and this is the story of how a prosperous colonial city became the birthplace of American independence, from loyal British subjects to revolutionary patriots, from peaceful protest to armed resistance, from colonial port to the city that sparked the war that created a nation. Colonial Boston, 1760, a prosperous port city of 16,000 souls hugging the harbor at the edge of Massachusetts Bay. Georgian brick buildings with white-trimmed windows line cobblestone streets. Church spires rise above the waterfront, visible for miles across the surrounding countryside. This is a comfortable, orderly town, still loyal to the British Crown. Wealthy merchants in powdered wigs and long coats conduct business along the wharves. The air smells of salt water, tar and timber. Horse-drawn carts clatter over cobblestones. Boston prospers under British rule. Long Wharf extends nearly 2,000 feet into the harbour, the longest pier in North America. Ships from England unload manufactured goods while colonial vessels prepare to depart laden with timber, cod, and whale oil. This maritime commerce connects Boston to London and makes fortunes for those who control it. Faneuil Hall, built 1742, serves as both marketplace and meeting house. On the ground floor, farmers and fishermen sell their goods beneath its brick arches. Above, town meetings gather to debate local affairs. This building represents colonial self-governance, the right of citizens to assemble and decide. The Stamp Act, March 1765. Everything changed when Parliament imposed taxes on printed materials without colonial consent. No taxation without representation became the rallying cry. Boston erupted in protest. The Sons of Liberty organized resistance throughout the city. Merchants boycotted British goods, refusing to import or sell them. Tax collectors found their offices destroyed by angry mobs, themselves intimidated into resignation. The Liberty Tree, a massive elm on Hanover Square, became the symbol of resistance where protesters gathered to burn effigies of royal officials. The Stamp Act was repealed in March 1766, but a dangerous line had been crossed. Bostonians had discovered that British authority could be challenged, that organized resistance could force Parliament to retreat. The relationship between colony and crown would never be the same. British occupation, October 1768. 4,000 redcoat soldiers arrived to restore order to a city parliament considered rebellious. 2 full regiments marched through streets designed for civilian commerce, not military occupation. Soldiers were quartered in barracks on the common and in buildings throughout the city. British soldiers patrolled with muskets and bayonets fixed, a constant reminder of military authority. Bostonians refused to house or feed them willingly. Confrontations became routine. Insults were exchanged. Scuffles broke out in taverns. The city transformed from prosperous port into occupied zone. Tensions escalated daily between troops and citizens. Every interaction carried the potential for violence. The redcoats represented Parliament's determination to enforce obedience. The colonists saw an army occupying their own streets, trampling their rights as British subjects. Boston Massacre, March 5, 1770. On King Street near the Custom House, a confrontation turned deadly. A crowd of colonists surrounded British sentries, throwing snowballs, chunks of ice, and insults. Captain Thomas Preston arrived with reinforcements. The crowd pressed closer, daring them to fire. In the chaos and confusion, British soldiers fired into the crowd without orders. 5 men lay dead in the blood-stained snow. Crispus Attucks, a sailor of African and native descent, Samuel Gray, a rope maker, James Caldwell, Samuel Maverick, and Patrick Carr, all mortally wounded. Paul Revere's engraving of the massacre spread throughout the colonies, showing British soldiers firing on defenseless citizens. The image was propaganda, but it inflamed revolutionary sentiment. What had been political resistance was becoming existential conflict. The violence shocked both sides, but radicalized opinion. The Old South Meeting House, Boston's largest building, became the center of revolutionary organizing. Here, 5,000 colonists could gather to debate the future of their relationship with Britain. Samuel Adams and John Hancock addressed crowds from the pulpit, transforming a house of worship into a political arena. Boston Tea Party, December 16, 1773. Parliament granted the East India Company a monopoly on tea sales to the colonies. Bostonians responded with direct action. That night, Sons of Liberty disguised as Mohawk Indians descended on Griffin's Wharf under cover of darkness. 3 British ships, the Dartmouth, Eleanor, and Beaver, sat laden with East India Company tea. The Patriots boarded all 3 vessels, broke open 342 chests, and dumped 46 tons of tea into the harbour. The entire operation was conducted with discipline and purpose. This was not protest. This was deliberate destruction of property worth £10,000. The colonists had crossed a line from petition to rebellion. John Adams wrote in his diary that this destruction of tea was so bold, so daring, so firm, it must have important consequences. The Intolerable Acts, Spring 1774. Britain's retaliation was swift and severe. The port of Boston was closed until the destroyed tea was paid for. The Massachusetts Government Act stripped away colonial self-governance. Town meetings were banned except by permission of the royal governor. British General Thomas Gage arrived as military governor with authority to quarter troops anywhere necessary. The message from Parliament was clear: submit to British authority or suffer economic starvation. Boston was being punished as an example to other colonies contemplating resistance. The city was blockaded. Royal Navy warships patrolled the harbour entrance. No ships could enter or leave without British permission. Trade collapsed overnight. Unemployment soared. Food became scarce. Families who had prospered from maritime commerce now faced poverty and hunger. But other colonies responded with solidarity rather than submission. Virginia sent grain overland. Philadelphia sent money. New York sent livestock. Supply wagons arrived, bypassing the naval blockade. What Britain intended as punishment of one rebellious city was becoming a cause that united 13 colonies. Boston's resistance was transforming into America's revolution. The Continental Congress convened in Philadelphia, representatives from all colonies gathering to coordinate response to British tyranny. George Washington, a Virginia planter, prepared to take command of colonial military forces. Preparations for war, early 1775. Throughout Massachusetts, colonial militias drilled on village greens. Men practiced loading and firing muskets. Military supplies were secretly stockpiled in Concord, 20 miles northwest of Boston. General Gage knew about these preparations. Gage planned to seize the weapons and arrest resistance leaders Samuel Adams and John Hancock before open conflict became inevitable. On April 18, 1775, British troops began moving secretly toward Concord under cover of darkness. Patriot watchers detected the movement immediately. Paul Revere's ride, April 18th. From the Old North Church steeple, 2 lanterns were hung. 2 if by sea. The signal worked. Revere and William Dawes rode through the night on different routes, warning militia companies throughout Middlesex County. The regulars are coming out. Lexington and Concord, April 19th. At dawn on Lexington Green, 77 militiamen faced 700 British regulars. Someone fired. Then volleys erupted. 8 colonists lay dead. At Concord's North Bridge, militia fired back. The British retreated toward Boston, harassed by colonial fighters the entire way. By the time the British column reached safety in Boston, 73 redcoats were dead, 200 wounded. The war had begun. Within days, 20,000 colonial militia surrounded the city. General George Washington arrived in July to take command. The siege of Boston had started. Standing here now, examining these reconstructed images of colonial Boston, we see where it truly started. Not in Philadelphia, where declarations were signed. Not in Yorktown, where victory was won. Here, in these streets where merchants refused unjust taxes, where citizens confronted armed soldiers, where Minutemen answered the call. This is the city that sparked the war that created a nation.